We're gonna go over the setup for both the deadlift, sumo, the conventional deadlift, and the sumo deadlift. So we're gonna start off with the conventional and just some things to keep in mind. It's really simple. You can do this with just four things to keep in mind. And each time it'll be consistent. One of the things that people always do is they kind of don't really have a system. And when we talk about setting up for all the different lifts, you want to have a checklist in your mind. So if you don't have a checklist, you're just going to kind of freely do whatever feels good. And that normally is not the right thing to do. So first things first, we want to step up to the bar. And this is where we talk about where you want it to be. Devin is not a dramatic powerlifting setup person. Setup-wise, you want to be able to have the bar in the middle of your foot. So when we're looking up above, below the bar, you'll notice that Devin is actually right in the middle. So that puts us maybe about 2 fingers away, a little bit over 1 inch to 2 inches away from the bar. If you're too far away from the bar, you're gonna start off really screwed up because then you have to get really low to get the bar, right? So there's a lot of knee bending going on in here, and we don't want that. Go ahead and stand back up. So getting yourself set up, stance-wise, normally about shoulder width apart. If you're too wide, you're gonna grab the bar a little too far out. So I normally tell people there's a range for everybody, but to start off with shoulder width apart is probably good. Another good way of thinking of it, if you ever played any sports and you're in a position where you're jumping, that's usually a good spot to start off with. Coming down to grab the bar, we want to keep the legs somewhat straight. They'll be slightly unlocked, but they won't be completely bent. Go ahead and reach down for the bar. He's gonna reach down on the side of his body. He's gonna straighten the legs and then come down until he touches the bar and then pull up. Pretty simple. So go ahead and put that back down. The things we keep in mind, when he is coming down for the bar, I recommend taking a breath. I don't know if you usually take a breath at the top when you...
I straighten my legs, take a breath, not that it gets in the way.
And that's for anybody. If you find that like you just need to get a little bit more space here, that's something you can definitely do. So as he's coming down to pick the bar, he's taking a breath when he straightens the leg. And we want to kind of have this set up because it gives us something to think about each time, right? So he straightens, comes down, pulls here, look at that, it's already coming up, and then stands up a bit. And back down. So the checklist is set up with the bar between your feet, bend down to grab the bar, keeping the legs slightly straight, take a breath, straighten, hit the bar, pull down and up, and the hips come to the bar. Very good. So some things that I see with a sumo and a conventional deadlift that are problematic is coming too far down to the bar. So what happens is you see a lot of knee bending here. So he looks like he's really squatting from the floor. For the most part, this is gonna be bad, and this is what it ends up looking like. Go ahead. Hips come up, and the rest of the body finishes the move. Go ahead and put that down. I will say that there are gonna be people you're gonna see who can squat like that, who can squat a deadlift from the ground. Those are the exceptions. There are some people who can do that. That's not what we're talking about here today. If for the most part, when people get too low where their hips are down like that, they're gonna do what we call the stripper pose or the double pump. So it's like boom, boom, and you're in that two motion. We want everything to look all in one. So try to do it low again. Right? Hips are really, really low. He's really, really over the bar. Go ahead and start. And lift. Good. So if you find yourself, put it down. If you find yourself, when you're recording yourself and you see this, boom, boom, you're probably going down too low. That means that you are setting up a little too far away from the bar, and that's allowing your knees to get down lower. You also do not want to set the bar up to you. This is something that I often see. And there are people who like to roll the bar into themselves. I don't coach that. I don't think that is the best way of doing it. Some people don't like to be in that position long, so they roll it in so they can pull it up. We're saying that's an exception. If you like to do that, I would suggest trying this because this is going to be a better, more stable, consistent setup. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
People roll it because they're a little too big to get in position, so they roll it, so they just briefly have to sit there to pull up.
Yeah, but it's
a body type mostly kind of thing.
Correct, yeah. And so when you start to put the bar to you, that's where, to me, problems will lie. So instead of taking the bar, getting your body close to it, you set up to the bar. Let's go over sumo real quick. Okay, sumo stance will differ for everybody. Some people have bigger femurs, so they're gonna be able to sit, it'll look like they sit back a little bit more. Some people are not as flexible, so they might not be able to get as wide. However,
Pretty wide.
it is pretty wide. I will say that if this is a deadlift bar, so the knurling is gonna be slightly different. No, the knurling is the same on the deadlift bar. It's the part over here. So when you set up on this bar, normally if we have our inside of our shin right close to this ring, have the other one set up right close to the ring, these are gonna be pointed out towards the weights. And the reason why we do that, instead of having your toes forward, go ahead and put your toes forward. When he bends down to grab it, right, the bar is already pushing out. And that becomes a problem. So if he is able to turn out, get the body very close to the bar, your leverages are much better for this. When he sits down, it should be the knees come out. Good, he's barely moving in. And he's getting into that position. Go ahead and come back out. Good. So set up, find something that works for you. This might be a little bit more narrow for you, or you might even be further out. Find something that feels comfortable, but doesn't allow you to get too low. Sometimes people will be out here and the range of motion is really short, but then their hips really can't take it. So you gotta consider those things in mind. So same checklist, he's gonna come down to the bar, breathe, good, go through it, and hold, and back down. The same idea, the hand grip is gonna be on the side of our body. So just think if you put your hands straight down, they're gonna be right there. Straighten the legs, take a breath, tuck and tighten here, boom, and then up. And back down. Some things I see that often, especially with sumo, is that people get too low with sumo. And what happens is that you're not necessarily in the best leverage. I don't know if Devin can get that low, so we will try that today. But what it looks like, go ahead and move real quick. What it looks like when you're too low, so if you're in this position, you'll see people and they'll be here, right? They're very, very low. The shoulder is gonna be very off to the side. We wanna have the shoulder slightly over or in line with the bar. So if you're back here, there's just not enough leverage. If you're trying to wedge something and you're back here, you're just gonna be, it's not gonna be the strongest position. So in this position, you're getting set up, breathe, pull back down, and up. I think that's about it. Oh. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about fillers that I like to use for the deadlift. I also like to use this exercise in between my benching because my back can kill me when I'm benching. So one of the things that this will do, this particular exercise, is helping reset the pelvis, kind of getting our pelvis and our rib cage in a good position, but pretty much it makes my back feel better. A lot of times when we're deadlifting, your back is super fired up because we're working back. So my hips and my back will just have this sort of real fired feeling. So today we're gonna go over an exercise that I like to use. You can do it in between your warm-up sets, or you can do it at the end. So at the end of my deadlift, I'll sometimes do a couple of these breaths, and that just sort of helps me transition to the next. So to get set up, you can get a bench. Anything that's about this height. You're gonna wanna keep your knees and your elbows in line, so you don't wanna be too far out, and you don't wanna be like this. We wanna try to keep these stacked on top of each other. The feet, you can imagine that you have something in between your knees here, and I've used a sweater or a shirt that I had, and I just kind of roll it up, place it in between my knees. Toes are gonna dorsiflex like this, and we're gonna have the heels into the ground. One thing you wanna remember here, if you look at my waist right here, I have this arch going on, right? We wanna push that down. And you notice how that automatically tilts my pelvis this way. So keep in mind that if you're in this arch, we're gonna push it down, drive the heels into the mat. I'm gonna keep my arms up like this, and we're gonna have this rounded, protracted look. And we're just going to breathe. So when I fill up my air, I'm trying to breathe through here, through my diaphragm, and then to my chest. And then when I breathe out, I'm gonna let all the air out as much as possible. So at the very end, I'm actually gonna hold it for as long as I can. and it's not very long usually, but 3 seconds or so with no air in your body. Fill it back up. And then you try to hold it at the end. Take about 4 breaths of those, relax, and you can do about 2 sets. You can do up to 3. I would say that you don't necessarily have to, but what you should feel is a firing up in your hamstrings right here because you are driving down at the same time. If you're not feeling that, you might need to have something in between your legs that you're squeezing. But you should feel a lot of relaxation on your low back because we're actually asking it to do the opposite. So I did want to kind of touch base on some things that you would like to have when you're powerlifting and things that, you know, you don't necessarily need to have, but will probably help you. So first things first is a belt. This is my brand new belt my husband got for me. This is probably what you would see in a powerlifting belt. It's a lot more sturdy. It's got a lot of things going on. This one's made by Pioneer. It doesn't necessarily matter the type of belt you choose, but whatever federation you're going to compete with, you want to make sure that you're meeting the standard or what's in the rule book. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. This is legal and it has a clip in it. So I like to have a lever, but really you can choose anything that has a prong or even a double prong. You can't use a Velcro. So you can practice with a Velcro, but you can't compete in most federations with a Velcro. Next things, knee sleeves. Knee sleeves are not totally necessary, but sometimes they feel good and they can give you a little bit of oomph in the hole. This one is made by Barbell. Doesn't necessarily matter what kind you have. Again, if you're competing, you want to make sure that you get the ones that are recommended by the federation that you're with. Sometimes they won't let you compete with another one, so you just want to keep them in mind. Wrist straps. I like to use wrist straps on benching and squatting. So this one is my new favorite. It's made by Inzer. It has a little bit of this kind of rubber inside of here, which I've never had. And then when we're talking about using them, you don't have to use it, but the benefit of using a wrist wrap is it's really going to keep your wrist in line and straight. So we won't have this bending of the bar when you're like squatting or when you're benching, right? So we're going to able to keep like a nice position in your wrist. These are all extras, and you know we like to be a little extra sometimes. Shoes. Wrestling shoes is a common one you'll see for deadlifting and squatting. This is probably like the most OG one you'll find. It's just a regular Asics wrestling shoe. A lot of people will also choose a flat shoe. So this is kind of like an off-brand Converse or like Vans. It's very flat. And the idea is if you're lifting with things that are going to have too much cushion, it probably will not help you when you're squatting because it's going to actually cushion some of the force that you have. So anything flat, anything fairly hard is going to work. It doesn't have to be a name brand. It doesn't have to be Converse. And this is just another brand of that I have. Again, all these things are not necessary. However, I would say out of all these things, a belt is something I would really consider after a while just because it does help to reinforce that sort of pressure we have on